sharing with you is around bridging the digital skills gap, unlocking the potential of the hidden middle. And I'm really pleased to be sharing this session today with a couple of colleagues from both Babington and also some of our partner organisations and clients. So we've got a great lineup today with colleagues from across Marks and Spencer, FutureDotNow, and other organisations that we're working with at the moment here at Babington. And today's session really is a great opportunity for us to bring together and pull together a real understanding around what it is that might be holding individuals and organisations back, and really centering around a great report that FutureDotNow have recently shared with us. And we'll have Paul Fleming from FutureDotNow doing a bit of a run through that report, followed by a bit of a session with our colleagues at Marks and Spencer, great client of ours that we've been working with over the last few years in their apprenticeship space, to share some great lessons from there. So yeah, if we go into the next slide, please, just to give you an idea of the agenda for today. So yeah, we'll be looking at and really sharing with you all what today's about. I've got some great guests lined up. We'll be unpacking the hidden middle with Paul from FutureDotNow, and we'll have a real great opportunity to look at solutions that Marks and Spencer have been deploying with a great colleague from there, Connor Rose. So real great thank you for those that have joined us today. And we'll also then be looking into and having a further discussion in our panel discussion with some great colleagues. We'll be exploring some of the key challenges, some of the questions, so that as an organisation, if you're joining us today, an individual, you should be going away with some real insight into what next steps you can take and how you can really unlock the potential of your hidden middle in your organisation or around your digital skills challenges in your own organisation. So on to our next slide, please. Thank you, Esther. So really, just to kind of frame today's session, really, you know, as an organisation, Babington really has set out an ongoing development in the digital and data sector for some time now. And we have some great partnership organisations such as BCS and other organisations like FutureDotNow, where we're really looking at how we can really help develop the skills and technical skills of individuals and organisations. And as an organisation, Babington is really in a unique situation with these partners and our clients to highlight that actually recently, you know, there's this huge digital skills gap that is holding back the potential of lots of organisations and individuals, but not a lot is being done about this at the moment. And I think today's session is going to be a real opportunity to help you understand what you might need to think about in terms of that digital skills gap. What might you need to look at in how to bridge that, and looking at some of the key insight and lessons that we have bringing together with our great partners and relationships that we've got with our organisations here today. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Paul Fleming. Paul is a community engagement manager at FutureDotNow, as well as a consultant manager with Accenture, and is seconded into the role of FutureDotNow's membership and community manager. And Paul brings with him over 20 years of experience in learning and development, spanning digital upskilling through to leadership development and everything in between. A UK native, Paul is currently based in Warsaw in Poland, and it was great to be chatting to him recently over the last few weeks and building the relationship. But he's been delivering learning projects for Accenture's global clients, and he's passionate about digital skills and social mobility and putting people at the heart of the learning process. So without further ado, Paul, welcome to the webinar today, and just handing over to you now to give us a bit more insight into really the frame and the context behind where the report that you guys have worked on at FutureDotNow and where this webinar really started to stem from.
Absolutely, and thanks very much, Phil, for the opportunity. Just checking everyone can hear me. Yep, it looks like people are smiling, so that's nodding, so that's good. Well, it's a delight to be with you today to talk through our latest report on unpacking the hidden middle. For those of you who don't know FutureDotNow, we are a coalition of leading UK organisations, all focused around solving the essential digital skills gap within the UK and the challenges that brings to UK economy and business. We do that together around 3 core areas, and those areas are both profiling the issue around the essential digital skills and the impact that can have on business, to then share tools and resources in order to upskill individuals, and then also to build a sense of community and collective action together to share insights and ways to approaching learning solutions within your organization and broader out in the community. Just to cover off where this hidden middle term came from. So this stems from some research that we did last year in 2021, which identified this gap in between those who are digitally excluded, and there's lots of energy and programs that are implemented there. And at the other end, you have those who are highly digital skilled and have those advanced level digital skills. The hidden middle are this group of individuals in between those two poles that largely go unnoticed. And there's circa 11.8 million UK working age adults without those essential digital skills. And I'll just quickly cover essential digital skills in a moment. But lacking those essential digital skills means that organizations can't take advantage of digital and unleashing the power for that in their organization from a productivity, from ways of engaging with their customers. Onto the report then we're going to talk through. So the Unpacking the Hidden Middle, it was a deep dive on the data from the Lloyd's Essential Digital Skills report from 2021. And this new report is exciting really, because it looks across the workforce this time, and it looks at 30.3 million working adults and what are the essential skills gaps, digital skills gaps that are lacking across that workforce. So within this short presentation, I'll just cover off some of those off around what skills are lacking, who in the workforce is struggling, and how to start to build some of those digital basics. And then what actions business can take to build digital confidence within their organization. So we can move to the next slide, please. Okay, so within the report itself, and I will allude to this and talk through in a bit more detail, we'll cover off the top 10 digital skills gaps that are missing across the workforce, those 30 plus million UK working age adults. And then from that as well, we've developed 4 workplace personas. They're fictional, but they give you some typical demographics and the needs and ways to support learners within your workforce. Or if you're a learner yourself, maybe you can see yourself showing up within these personas. I know I can certainly do that, and we'll unpick that and have a look at a bit more detail in a moment. Just to cover off, if you don't know what the Essential Digital Skills Framework is, it's accessible online through the Department for Education's website, or you can go to FutureDotNow.uk and you can access the framework there. But it covers those digital skills that are essential for life and work to be a fully functioning, engaged citizen within the UK and through digital kind of means. So it's not the super exciting stuff at the other end, the blockchain, the AI, all of that great stuff. This is around those skills to be effective and productive in life and work. So it's things like registering for online services, a bank account, doing online shopping, and then within a work context, it could be things like booking annual leave or using the internet effectively to research information for your job role. So those are the types of skills that we're talking around. If you just move to the next slide, please. Just to put it in a bit of a business context, though, we know that 69% of leaders believe that they have a digital skills gap within their organization. But in contrast to that, we also know that half of businesses don't test their employees for digital literacy. So there seems to be a misalignment there with what's happening. There is a need, but we're not necessarily doing much as organizations about that. But we also know that 57% of employees think that learning digital skills through work is probably the easiest way to develop those digital skills. So we have a real opportunity to do something about that. So let's have a look at these digital skills and what they mean. So we can move to the next slide. So there are 10 digital skills gaps across the report. And you can see here, we've got the first 5. On the next slide, we've got the next 5. Indicated here, you've got the skill, what category area they fall into. So for example, transacting or being safe online, or communicating, and then a description of what that skill means. On the right-hand side, we've got the percentage of the workforce who are unable to do that particular activity, and then an indication of how many people that equates to. So if we just look at the top 3, from a transacting point of view, be able to manage digital records, use financial accounts online and digital systems, nearly 10 million people are unable to do that. From a being safe point of view, we've got 2 there in the top 3. So setting privacy settings on your social media accounts, again, nearly 10 million people are unable to do that. And then also updating computer security systems, again, 9 million people are unable to do that within the workforce. If you think then around what that means for business and the impact that that can have, within the top 10, there's additional one around assessing risks and threats online, and that's at position 9. It's just off this slide, but we've got 3 within the top 10 that are all around being safe. That presents a risk for business, and it's no surprise that 40% of businesses have reported a cyber attack in the last 12 months. So this is a real issue and something that we need to work on and address collectively. I'd be really curious on the call, just to do a bit of a straw poll here. So what we'll do is just have a scan through those skills there, and then in a few moments, we'll just move to the next slide, so you can just have a look through those skills. So we can just move on, that would be great. So here we've got skills 6 to 10, so problem solving, using different digital tools to improve your own productivity. At number 6, again, we've got that number 9 being safe, so assessing risk and threats. We've also got communicating using digital collaboration tools to meet and share information, such as Teams as we're using today. So I'm curious to everyone that's on the call, and let's be honest about this. Let's use the reaction buttons. And so in the top panel there, if you've not used the Teams before, you've got the little reactions icon, which is like a smiley face with a hands up. If you click on that, we've got a series of reactions in there. What I'm going to say is, if you think you've boxed off all 10 of these digital skills and you've nothing to learn, give me a thumbs up. However, if you think you've still got a bit of room for improvement in some of these, give me a heart instead. So let's just kind of get a sense as to where people are at. Okay, so a few thumbs up to start, and we're getting more hearts. Yeah. Fantastic. Brilliant. So we've got a mix of people on the call, and that's understandable. But if we skip to the next slide, what the report reveals is that 2/3 of workers within the workforce have an opportunity to grow their basic digital skills, and that's across everybody. You know, I think in our first report, we identified this 11.8 million people without the essential digital skills. But this next report, the Unpacking the Hidden Middle report that we're looking at here, is across the workforce. So just because you're deemed as having the essential digital skills, that means you have one skill in each of the 5 category areas. There are 17 digital skills for work. So, you know, you can be without those other 12 digital skills that you could be lacking, and it goes across every level from the shop floor up to the C-suite. So everybody has an opportunity to develop here. If we skip to the next slide. So what we did based on those top 10 digital skills is we developed 4 fictional personas, which helps yourselves as practitioners, as educators, or as learners. You know, you may see yourself within these personas. Target specific demographics for specific actions. So you'll see there are 4 here, ranging from digitally lacking Lou up to higher performing digital Denny, and some of these are a bit of a tongue twister, but you'll see that they're all gender neutral terms here. We're very sort of proud about that, so we wanted to go with that as a format. But each demographic here, each persona has something that they can learn, something they can develop in, something to be mindful of. And you can see the amount of people within this within the report that fall into each of these categories. We'll touch on digitally lacking Lou in a moment, but for the likes of digitally safe Sam, so Sam is okay with those kind of being safe online, but maybe where Sam is lacking is around sort of digital networking skills and the limitations that could bring with either gaining information and insight from a wider audience, or be able to network with other individuals from a mobility point of view and getting promotion and advancement within their career. And then also tools for efficiency and productivity as well. They've got some areas to benefit there. If you look at Zayden, so Zayden, you know, maybe a whiz at actually collaborating online and using Zoom and Teams and all those collaboration tools, but poses a risk around digital safety and the impact that that can have on an organization. And that's circa 4 million people there around that. And then high performing Denny. So Denny may have those digital skills. However, we know that digital skills move. What was, you know, needed 5 years ago is different to what's needed now. Who knew we'd needed to use Zoom and Teams as much before the pandemic? Now everybody is using collaboration platforms. So it's important that we don't rest on our laurels and we continuously develop those skills in order to move forward. So those personas are there to help target action within the organization around learning to help it make it simple and to speed up the process. So if we move to the next slide, please. So this is an example of what the persona will cover. So you can see on the left some more stats and details. You can see it breaks it down into the life tasks for the Essential Digital Skills Framework and also the work tasks, because we've been holistic in our view there. If you, as I say, you can look more into what's covered in that digital skills framework through the Department for Education website or through FutureDotNow's website as well. But you can also see some of the deficits that are digital deficits that are lacking within this type of group. So they may be slightly older, they could be working public services, and they're less likely to be at the higher end of their salary bracket. There are those sort of the lower earners typically. There's ways that you can really help people like Lou. So it's around helping them build digital motives, giving them the link as to why this is going to affect them and help them both in life, not just in work, to create structured learning paths. Because when you start to learn digital skills, it can be a massive sort of broad spectrum of opportunities, and it's where do you start? And you start to get confused. If you structure that learning path in bite-sized chunks, it helps them progress and build those skills and confidence, and then offer them support, maybe from, you know, a workplace mentor, or actually, you know, could you utilize somebody like digitally kind of Denny, you know, those high in digital skills that could help sort of coach and support someone like Lou in that particular demographic. So just moving on to the next slide. There we go. Brilliant. So all to say really, before we sort of cover off the final kind of what action you can take based off this, is that basic digital capability is a universal workforce skills gap. I think sometimes it can go unnoticed, and that's why we've called this the hidden middle, because it can kind of get lost into this bigger skills deficit. But digital skills are fundamental in order to help organizations prosper effectively. If you look at recent research by PwC and the World Economic Forum, there's a potential uplift to the UK economy of 3.2 billion just through digital upskilling and helping us get, you know, a competitive place on the world stage in terms of digital skills. There's a real opportunity there, and to upskill people on these basic digital skills is something that we can do. It's not necessarily simple, but working together we can achieve that. So moving on to the next slide, please. So 7 pointers that we've detailed within our action, within our report. Please share the report. First of all, read it. I would say it's a great read. I've got a copy here with me, but you can just see it. So you can download that from our website. It's absolutely free. But then once you've read it, please share it with your CEO, your board, your HR, business leaders, so they'll really start to understand what impact that could mean on their organization. If you want another quick win, prioritize cybersecurity and development around that. That can really sort of limit the risks to your organization. Then do some baselining and know where your starting point is. What are the levels of digital skills with your employees? You can do that through using some of the personas to give you a quick start, indication of, what percentage of your workforce falls into each of those personas. Or then you could do something a bit more advanced, such as sort of surveys, and kind of more advanced data work within your organization to really understand that skills gap. Acknowledge that there are different needs within your organization. You can't just dip through people through a load of e-learning. That might not work. People learn in different ways, have different preferences. So, really listen to your workforce and what's going to work for them and engage them in the process. Aim to build digital confidence as well as capability. And I'm aware of times, so hopefully I can cover that off later on in the panel discussion, but it's something I want to go back to. Become a member of FutureDotNow. We are free to join. There's no strings attached. You can be part of a community where you can share insight and learn from others. And then you can also join one of our programs as well. We have a current program along with Barclays, where we're using their Digital Wings platform and Digital Eagles service to run some test and learn pilots as to how you can implement this effectively within your workforce and what are some of the learning and back from that and how we can tackle these digital skills gaps. So the last slide before we just finally finish is just to say, jump onto our website, download the report. It's a great read. You can get into more of the detail around what we've just discussed, but I look forward to joining you back in the panel in a short moment.
Thank you, Paul. And yeah, it's really great to hear, all that research being brought together there, and appreciate you summarising that for the audience and just some of those key steps that we'll look at next. And what I'm really pleased to do now is bring on to our next part of our webinar today. So if I could just bring up the next slide, please. And I'm really pleased to introduce and bring to the conversation next Connor Rose. And Connor leads the strategy at M&S around digital culture and people capability. And they launched the retailers Beam Academy 2 years ago to begin addressing this opportunity, which has been obviously outlined in Paul's research and the research from FutureDotNow there, but really looking at expanding and diversifying the portfolio of initiatives for all colleagues to grow their digital and data skills and ways of working. So a real warm welcome to you, Connor, today. Good to have you on from Marks and Spencer's. And in this next session, we're just going to really focus in on a bit of a Q&A, a solution spotlight, where I'll be interviewing Connor really to sort of hear a little bit more about how M&S have got on with this challenge themselves. So just to bring you in, Connor, into the conversation, and if you want to take the slides down, Esther, we can have a great conversation here. So yeah, welcome, Connor. I just wanted to start off with, I guess, how did M&S get started in this space, and what's the story from then to now? So I'm sure there'll be lots of people on the call listening, with various different size organizations, but might be worth just sort of summarizing, like you did with me when we started. What's the challenge M&S has faced, and how have you got from where you were then to now?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Phil. Great to be here with everyone. Thanks for inviting me, and hi to everyone on the call as well. So how did we get started? I mean, it hasn't been that long in the grand scheme of, our 130-year-old business, but we've tried to get up to a lot, and I'd asterisk that by saying, we still see ourselves at the beginning of the journey, to be honest, against what our ambitions are. I suppose if I offer a bit of broad context around where do we get started digital data skills wise, and you already mentioned about 2.5 years ago we identified the need specifically around data skills at M&S. We just formed our first data strategy. We were just kind of embarking on the journey of transforming our data platform and the data itself. It was very focused at the time, and the only thing we had in the people space was a level 4 data apprenticeship as the entire offering for the entire business. And it had double-digit colleagues out of a population of 70,000 colleagues engaged across a few cohorts. So not going to be enough. So we had big ambitions kind of to build a broader proposition, but didn't quite know what it could be initially. We hired one person to kind of explore what could this be, and that's what got us all started, really. So while forming it out, we started small, and actually we went even more narrow than just data. It was very clear that there was a particular tool that we'd introduced previously where hadn't embedded that well. Colleagues said they needed a lot of help still, and that was Power BI, which is our kind of data visualization and reporting tool at M&S. So we did a 2-week virtual event for our support staff, and 1,300 colleagues attended at least one session. And then equally for our retail managers in stores, or over 3,000 of them joined us. So it kind of blew us away, the level of engagement, to what was ultimately a virtual optional learning event. And it just kind of reinforced that appetite and open door that colleagues want help. They want it on data, and it's one of those skills that they feel worried that they don't have. So it kind of all snowballed from there, really. So at the moment, we focus on kind of 3 macro audiences, or at least this is how we started off when it was very data focused, which is what help do our specialist roles need? So our data analysts and our data scientists, etc. What support did the general population at M&S need, both support centers and stores? And what do our leaders need? So we have different objectives for each of those, but we kind of recognize we need to nudge them all 3 together at the same time. We can't excel at one because they're so complementary what we're at least trying to achieve. So I suppose where that took us to, on data alone, it took us from that one data apprenticeship, the level 4, to then launch a level 3 with yourselves. And this was in months of the standard being released. And then more recently, we've launched the level 7 as well. Again, kind of on both of those, the first retailer to do so. And I think that really lines up to, we've got a strong intention in this space and understanding of the value we really think it can give to us. So we're just trying things, to be honest. Now, this is more broadly complemented by regular live learning sessions, most of which, again, they run completely virtual. Pretty much everything we got set up during the pandemic. So yes, we kind of have a foundation of that. And these are run by either like some of our platform partners, a lot from Microsoft, and a lot of internal subject matter experts. And we do about 20 of these sessions each quarter on all sorts of different topics for each of those 3 audiences. And then we've got classic learning pathways kind of on our learning management system, etc. as well. I think the bit I would add, I suppose, in terms of what have we been up to, how do we get there, etc., is we launched all of this under an internal brand, which is Beam Academy, which you mentioned. And this was really to kind of associate value and drive one home for this, because one of the existing challenges that was in our landscape at the time was we had disparate, incomplete, and untargeted learning in this space. So for us, that was, part of the solution had to be to kind of help direct our colleagues in a way. And that's where we just started gaining traction, really, kind of getting that organic growth internally. And we've evolved our scope now a few times. So we went from data skills to digital culture, as we call it, which is kind of ways of working and behaviors far broader than data. And we do big events such as an annual digital conference, 24-hour hackathons, and we've recently launched reverse digital mentoring for our kind of senior leaders across the business as well. And then more recently, a third kind of scope growth, which is essential digital skills, which ultimately we'd already started addressing with different objectives, but now we're looking at much more broadly.
Thanks, Cora. I think it's really great to hear that experience that you've gone through as an organisation. A retailer on the high street that's obviously having to transform and be challenged by all of these digital, new players. How the high street is changing, and it's so great to hear how much of a focus that M&S has put into the development of skills, and actually how people reacted to that in both your stores and across the organisation. I guess you started to touch on there what the digital skills opportunity is, and it'd be great to hear a bit more. What are you planning to do then to sort of really take that challenge that Paul shared with the FutureDotNow? Does that resonate with what the M&S organisation is facing? And what are you doing to sort of face into that digital skills opportunity now?
Yeah, sure. And I think it definitely resonates. And I would say, we started engaging with FutureDotNow. I mean, I'm bad at guessing timeframes. I'm going to say 9 months ago, and let's say that's somewhere. that's probably somewhat accurate. Paul can correct me, I'm sure. And we're signed onto the coalition, and I think it was at the right time where, we were recognizing the real need for this in our customers, especially linked to things like more in-store technology, online shopping, our app, our Sparks loyalty program, but equally in our colleagues and their role as both customers themselves, but also in converting our customers, especially for our in-store colleagues. So, we have a real kind of business objective and transformation lens when we were first looking at this. But I think equally, this was all within the storm of complementary issues such as talent attraction, retention, availability, higher competition in the consumer market as well as in talent markets. So it's definitely the time where action has to happen. And I suppose we're approaching it in a few ways. So Paul mentioned work and life quite distinctly, and actually we love that FutureDotNow really call this out, and we recognize the importance of both of these elements and are committed to do so. I think we would love one day to help customers directly, but we also recognize we've got to take this step by step, and right now the kind of focus is colleagues. The reality for us of being the business we are and in retail is that at our scale, step one really does need to index more towards that work focus to get the buy-in we need, to get the value up front for our colleagues and customers, but really trying to approach and design the learning to kind of resonate with the life skills that are needed as well. I think from an audience perspective, when we talk about approach for us, yes, all colleagues are humans, as are our customers, and actually there's a lot of similarities in how we can approach that. But there are some key distinctions in how our colleagues live their lives at M&S, especially the roles they have. So we've kind of split it out into 3 distinct audiences initially, which is our store colleagues, advisors and management split separately slightly within that, our support center teams, and then our distribution colleagues. At least for the initial program we're delivering, we think those are quite important distinctions. I think in terms of the grand scheme of how we're approaching it, we all recognize that digital is not a static skill or a static industry, and actually how we approach this problem statement's got to be the same. So that's why we're trying to treat digital colleague enablement as a product in the sense that we need to consistently address it, evolve it, validate it, and our job is never going to be done. Like we haven't just signed up to do like a 1-year, 3-year transformation here. We started something that's never going to finish, and we've got to be okay with that. So up front, we've got a program which we're calling Digital Essentials, and the ambition there is 100% of our 65,000 colleagues in our UK group go through some kind of digital essentials learning in the next 12 months. That's the commitment we've made, but that's step one. That's to get us going ultimately. From that, there's going to be so many more different things. I think there's a massive part in peer-to-peer and social learning for sure, in terms of how we enable this formally and more informally. And definitely in terms of a better technology to surface up relevant and timely kind of learning and enablement as well, to really get under the problem statement is what I would say. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely like loads of other lenses, I suppose, in terms of how we're approaching it. The one I would add just before I stop blabbing on, and Paul kind of alluded to it slightly as well, but actually our main objective here is confidence, not skills. Our primary focus is to move the dial on how our colleagues feel and how digitally confident they are right now, which for us is a combination of skills, mindset, application of these things through kind of the behaviors they have, but ultimately how our colleagues feel about digital is what we want to move up front. And we're trying to be as unapologetically colleague focused as possible, with loads of fantastic byproduct benefits to our customers, 100%, but we focus on the customer first across the board. And that's got us to where we've got, and we have a great opportunity here now. And now we need to give our colleagues kind of what they need and how they need it, kind of unapologetically is our view.
No, that sounds great. And I think it's a really good example of, if you're thinking as an organization listening in, or an individual, just what are there, what you're thinking about right now, where you are on that journey. Because as you say, all these different technologies are coming into play. They're constantly evolving. We're doing more with all the different things that we've got in store or not, and different competitors to you will be trying different things. So you've got to be on that front, and it's great to hear that you're always going to be digitally evolving, because it isn't a static thing. It isn't a tick in the box. Yes, we've got those skills, we can leave it there, because as we've said, how does that then lead on to the other elements of really unlocking the potential in different ways? Because I'm sure there'll be some store colleagues, some distribution colleagues who, once they get into this, will be really thinking about, well, what's their next career step and what are the problems they're solving. And we know from a colleague experience experience in most organizations, the great problems are solved by the people doing the do, aren't they, day to day? And if they've then got the skills and the tools to help sort of shine a light on those problems and start to solve them, then as an organization you really start to innovate and mobilize in ways that are really powerful, aren't they? So yeah, I guess just last question then, you know, just in terms of an example and thinking about how it's come to life for an M&S colleague or colleagues in the business and the business value, what would you say the work you've done so far has really enabled you as a business to achieve?
Yeah, I think we've got such a mix of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and who we're doing it for. So there's definitely an eclectic answer to that lines up with some of those things. I think, you know, one of the things that we're really conscious of and have had to force ourselves to get comfortable with is that some things are really relevant to the majority in the mass. And with that, you sometimes get some, you know, really great big numbers in terms of who's involved and engagement, and they make you feel great. But actually, there's a real importance for some real targeted things where some of the metrics look a bit smaller, but they are massively valuable and impactful. So I suppose that's where I would split out kind of articulating that colleague and business value. We've got programs such as our data apprenticeships, our events such as our 24-hour hackathon. You know, they comparatively have a smaller population reach and colleagues that get involved. They're a bigger commitment, but they are massively immersive and transformational to both the colleague and who those colleagues work around. And, you know, in that lens, a few examples of things like colleague career journeys, for example, if we talk about apprenticeships especially. So there's someone called Imogen who did the level 4 apprenticeship. She was in merchandising role in clothing and home, and it helped kind of progress and move her into what's now an insight analyst role in our .com business. So kind of opened her eyes to a new business, but actually applying some of the stuff she was already doing, but really turbocharged that and ultimately kept her in the business. Equally, Martina, fantastic individual again, was in clothing and home. She was already in an insight role, did the level 4, became a junior data scientist, is now doing the level 7 to kind of turbocharge her data science skill set as well. And I think those stories are great. And sometimes it is about career progression and transformation. And I think to your point, the best people in those specialist roles are the people that know our business. So converting those individuals is far more valuable to us than bringing people in for the most part.
Yeah.
But actually, it's not always about moving role or moving people into specialist roles. It's about like current role enablement as well. And I think for me, that's where the level 3 apprenticeship plays a much bigger part. And especially where we have a lot of store colleagues on board, it's how do we make them better at their current job, because their current job has changed and actually it's going to keep changing. I think if we like look less immersive, I suppose, and kind of talk about the business value side of things as well. Yes, a lot of out of our apprenticeships, we've had cost savings, we've had opportunities identified, which is, you know, fantastic from a business value perspective. And those have been very data focused, where our core proposition has been. I think more recently, as we've been progressing on the digital essentials journey with our store work, the most mature out of those 3 audiences I mentioned, you know, we trained every colleague in our new Stevenage store on digital essentials to pilot our program. And actually, our colleagues have told us they're far more confident, and this is coming through in customer commentary as well, about the experience they're having and how seamless it is when they're engaging with customers about things that maybe they do or maybe they don't recognize are kind of digital touch points. And we're currently just kicked off this week. So I've been in Scotland this week. So we're doing a regional trial of the Evolve program of that before we then assess it to kind of go out to every colleague with that ambition I mentioned of kind of 100% of colleagues for sure. And I suppose the broader pieces, the hackathon I mentioned, this is something we run every 6 months. So we'll be doing our 6th one in October. In the last one, we had 240 colleagues take part. So again, grand scheme of things, small colleague population, but actually massively immersive. And the overwhelming feedback is kind of through the connections they make, the skills they learn, and the level of confidence to move on and go and apply digital and data in their role. It's hugely transformative from what our colleagues are telling us. But a byproduct of that, because we do it again, it's a cultural impact event for us. It's not to solve the world, it's a cultural impact event, but they always have to be real opportunities. So we actually have a lot of stuff that has gone live for colleagues and customers. I don't know if you might remember, maybe 2 years ago, it was our we had a Christmas countdown Percy Pig widget that people could download. That came out the back of that event. Tens of thousands of customers downloaded and used it.
Yeah.
You know, a solution for our Sparks loyalty program sign up. It used to take 2 minutes. And through the event, again, the colleagues used a technology that we weren't using at M&S, and it reduced the sign up time to 30 seconds. So
Brilliant.
actually focus on culture, focus on people. It's producing a lot of business value at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Hannah, it's just some great, real best practice going on in your organisation. I really appreciate you sharing that insight with us on this audience today. We're going to hear a bit more from you and the rest of our panel next as part of our panel discussion, but there are some questions that have come up, so we will get into some of those as part of our panel conversation, so hold some of those thoughts, but really love you sharing that insight, and what a great set of examples of some of the things that you can do from both, you know, thinking about colleague experience, colleague development through to career pathways. It's a real blend of all the different great things that you should do around people, culture, enablement when it comes to digital. So really great, and thank you for sharing that, Connor, with us. So I'm just going to bring back the rest of the group now. So just to introduce that, we've now got a panel discussion going to take place. So if I can just bring up just the slide that we had just to introduce everybody again. I'm just going to remind you that we've got Paul and Connor, obviously, who you've met now as part of the conversation so far, but I'm really pleased to also introduce alongside Paul and Connor, Rachel Kay, who's our Chief Learning Officer here at Babington. And Rachel has over 25 years in learning development and has held executive level roles in Thales and Capita, and worked with both public and private sector clients. And as Chief Learning Officer for Babington, her remit is to meet the challenges faced by industry on developing new business operating models as a result of COVID, and identifying the skills and capability agendas required to support business growth and build the workforce of the future. So really welcome, Rachel. Great to have you on.
Thank you for that description. I'll make a note of that in my job description.
Yeah, no worries. And we're also really pleased to be joined by Jack Appleton, and Jack is a mergers and acquisition analyst at Lincoln International, and Jack started his career working in the business development department for an apprenticeship training provider. And as part of his development, he undertook the level 4 data analytics apprenticeship, and we're really pleased to have him along because this has enabled him to equip himself with the technical skills that enable him to communicate and interpret data. And this has opened up new career options in the world of corporate finance, and now works as merger and acquisitions analyst for investment bank Lincoln International, where he utilises data to articulate businesses' equity stories. So again, great to have you join us, Jack, because it'll be great to hear from your individual perspective as a learner, being an apprentice, being a data analyst apprentice, and what that's led you into. So really great to have you on. And I'm also pleased to say that as part of the panel today, we've also got Joe Rowley, who's one of our solution architects. And Joe previously worked in the corporate learning industry for over 22 years and joined Babington just recently in June. And Joe really has a passion around education, and certainly thinks that, you know, education creates freedom, progression, and empowerment for individuals and societies. And Joe strongly believes that humans have great capacity for growth and change no matter their life stage, and learning should be fun, inspirational, and stimulating. So it'd be really great to have Joe as part of the conversation to really help look at what solutions and opportunities those that are on the call today might be looking for, and how we can take and help you really unlock your potential in the digital skills space. So without further ado, we're going to come to our panel now. So if I can ask for the slides just be taken down temporarily, that's great. And just to kick things off, Paul, we're going to just come back to yourself, because obviously we've talked a lot in this conversation now around the actual skills gaps that people have. We've heard from Connor an example of what's happened there, but it'd be great to sort of touch on some of the new issues that are emerging that individuals and organisations should be focusing in on, because I think listening to what Connor said around confidence, around the scale of the challenge, you know, what is it that you think we should really be thinking about and focusing in on, not only the skills, but how people are actually applying those and working with those skills in all these different contexts?
Yeah, and it thank you for that, Phil. And it comes up quite a lot in conversations with members. And I just wanted to kind of just reiterate what Connor said. I really like that line around digital is not a static skill. It was just a great line, because it isn't. You know, I think confidence is more important than necessarily skills in an odd way, and a focus on that. If we can develop that muscle for learning, and that appetite for learning, that belief that you can find the solutions, I think that's a good place to start, really. Because if we think about, you know, it's human nature. we don't really like to talk about what we don't know. And I think that's even worse when you may be in senior level roles, you know, because there's certain expectations that, well, I should be seen as knowing this already. So that creates barriers to addressing the issue in the first place. And there was a really interesting conversation at the report launch, actually. It was Peter Cheese, CEO of CIPD, coined a new fifth persona when he said kind of digital dangerous directors, and actually he fell into that bracket, you know, that he was aware that he had some skills that are lacking in there, and you know, the importance of leaders to be able to disclose that they don't themselves have these digital skills in some areas, and they're focusing on developing that, so developing this muscle of sort of confidence. And then also, you know, if you think about those maybe at the front line who may have concerns around what does digital mean for them, actually implementing these new digital solutions, how's that going to impact my job? Could it mean redundancies? Could it be sort of change? And that change is scary for a lot of people. So I think it's important as sort of L&D practitioners, HR practitioners, to work with learners. Change is just as important, I think, and bring people along with us. And I know that's part of a lot of the conversations that we have with members at FutureDotNow around that. So yeah, that's what I would say on that issue.
Brilliant. And I think it's good to want to bring Rachel in at this point, because I think, Rachel, it'd be really great to sort of get your lens on what experience Babington has with these particular challenges, because I think it's a really great point to make, Paul, from, you know, from the shop floor to the C-suite, but, you know, actually, you know, people's confidence, people's acceptance to say, do you know what, I've got a challenge, I need to develop this. But what would you say, Rachel, are Babington's experience of these challenges, you know, from our perspective?
Yeah, yeah, good afternoon to everybody. Thank you for everybody's attendance today, and also to our speakers so far. There's three things for me, and you know what, Connor has done such a great job in articulating the challenges that organisations have. So probably just to summarise, actually, probably the Marks and Spencer's journey, but not just Marks and Spencer's. It's obviously, you know, other clients that we're having conversations with. And I think some of those things that we're experiencing that we're helping clients on is firstly around talent development, and also specifically in ensuring that you've got employee progression through the organisation. So rather than at the moment with the great resignation of constantly, you know, re-recruiting great big new teams of people, is how can you make sure, especially when it's a digital skill that's required, that you've really got good employee progression, and you know, how do you continue with that sort of talent development specifically around the competencies and skills associated with digital. So that's one of the things that we're asked to help on. The second thing is around how you can help build confidence, as we've already talked about. And I went to Paul's event recently with FutureDotNow, and when I was sat there listening to them, I was thinking, you know, if I looked at myself as a learner, you know, especially with digital stuff, sometimes it's a confidence issue, not always a competence. I know, team, you're Phil, you're in my team, and you might disagree with me there, but I feel sometimes it's a confidence thing, not a competence thing. And how can we help organisations deal with that? And the way that we do it, and the way Joe, for example, would help from a solutions point of view, is really looking sure that you're creating the rounded individual in skills. So I can have great technical skills, but if I can't apply them in the workplace, they're no good. And that's really when I met Jack. So Jack, I'm going to bring you in at some point, because when I've been working with Jack at Lincoln with work Babington are doing with them, I just said to him, my gosh, what's your background? Because he's got this amazing ability to take data, analyse it. He spotted things that, you know, other people in the meeting hadn't spotted in terms of trends. And I was like, tell me your background. How do you? And he's got a great background. So Jack, come in a minute and tell them how you didn't do that sort of traditional piece. So it's around confidence and competence that we see. And then the third thing is what Connor talked about as well, and that's culture. And not just learning culture, but how do organisations have a culture where data and, you know, data skills actually are part of all of the different functions. So if I'm in HR, I mean, I come from a large corporate background for the last 30 years. You know, I look now at the data and the analytics that HR professionals need to do. They didn't necessarily come equipped with those skills. So how do we make that transition? And also, again, Connor raised this point as well, is how do you mitigate risk around having somebody that is potentially quite, you know, unconsciously incompetent or consciously incompetent or unconsciously incompetent, because that's quite dangerous. You know, somebody that thinks I know how to do it, but actually I don't, you know, is that going to cause a problem? You know, Marks and Spencer's, I suddenly use the technology wrong. I make a decision around procurement or merchandising, and all of a sudden something's gone wrong. So having that culture and mitigating risks by having great digital skills, I think that's what's sort of coming up. So because I mentioned Jack, should we let just Jack, do you want to just come in and just, you know, talk about that little journey that you had and, you know, confidence and competence in data skills? Because I know probably the audience would love to hear about it.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Rachel, and thanks, Phil. So yeah, my background originally wasn't in kind of a technical role at all. I was working in business development. And as Phil mentioned, kind of as part of my development, went on the level 4 data program. As part of this, learnt lots of kind of technical skills, kind of your coding, your kind of quite technical digital skills for analytics. But I think the main skill I took away was the data-driven mindset piece. So kind of thinking in a data world, essentially, instead of kind of when I'm making decisions, I now kind of usually try to lean towards data rather than making gut instinct, which I think people kind of fall upon and kind of rely on their emotions a little bit too much. So yeah, really, I think the data mindset piece has really helped me in my career going forward, making insights and kind of recommending and visualizing and telling stories with data. And then that's enabled me to kind of further my career and kind of go into the world of finance, even though I don't have a traditional finance background. Kind of I make up for it in other sense with kind of the data skills.
Yeah. And that's the point, really, I think, around that career progression, that, you know, someone like Jack wasn't holding back going into work for an investment bank because he didn't have a banking background. What he's bringing to the table is great digital skills. I mean, I would buy that. So sorry, Phil, I just thought it was quite good.
No. I think it's a really great point, and I guess what I guess just leaning onto that then is, you know, what do you think, Jack, are the typical challenges individuals face within the data and digital space in your own experience? Because you obviously went through a very particular route. You went through the apprenticeship route, which, you know, I'm sure was a really great way of learning, and you know, is a really great way of demonstrating that competence. But what do you think the challenges individuals face currently within the data and digital space, and how did the apprenticeship help you solve some of those challenges?
Yeah, no, I think it's mainly what we've been touching on today. It's kind of bridging the gap, because I think at the moment a lot of technical skills are kind of siloed in your data science teams and kind of sat behind kind of people imagine they're just sat there coding all day, when in reality I think there's a lot more to be done across all levels, and just kind of basic data literacy across organizations, and just would benefit everyone a lot more, just being able to look at an Excel spreadsheet and not kind of panic because there's loads of numbers, and then also part of that, just being able to visualize and again telling stories and being able to break that down and communicate. So yeah, I think the biggest challenge is kind of bridging the gap and the kind of educating across the board everyone the kind of the core skills needed to be able to do those things.
Yeah, I think it's a really great point, isn't it? Because actually, if you have got a lack of confidence in something, then, you know, it's going to freak you out. You know, if you get a report from somewhere, you know, where do you start? Do you know how to open it? Do you know how to read through it? Do you understand all those things? So that's really great to hear. I just wondered, as everyone's kind of listening, you know, we will open up now to sort of, as we're doing this panel discussion, if there are any particular questions from the audience. And while we're waiting for those questions to come through, what I did want to just tap into, Joe, was, you know, what are the options then, thinking about all the conversations we've had today, but what are the options that when we're talking about entry-level digital skills, you know, what is available to people, you know, what's out there, and how does Babington and other organisations help with that?
So we've got a number of like different funded options that we can choose from. We've got things like digital skills boot camps. So we can go from a virtual project manager, which kind of really focuses on leading projects through the virtual world. We've also got data analyst. So if you want to go down a similar route to what Jack's been doing, and we've got digital leadership as well. So if you want to move into that digital leader sort of role, we've got there's a lot of funding options. and there's a great guide in assessing those skills, which Paul mentioned earlier. So I'll just pop that in the chat now. We've also got, for individuals, if they wanted to approach their L&D partners or their HR, they can get in contact with them to see what they have in their departments or organisations. And in terms of Babington, there's a whole wealth of different funded learning solution pathways that we've got. And we've got sort of, again, like the entry-level boot camps, but we go right up to level 7. So we're really thinking about progression. We're thinking about the whole journey for the learner. And we'd be happy to sort of discuss that with you and reach out. If anybody's got any questions regarding that, we can make time for you there. I'll just pop a link to that in the chat as well, what we've got on offer.
Yeah, that's really great. And Emma, thank you. First questions come in then from our audience. So Connor, how do you make sure your partners such as Ocado support your initiatives?
Yeah, thanks, Emma. It's an interesting one. I mean, we have a massive host of partners, right? Ocado is an interesting relationship in the sense that you've got Ocado Group and you've got Ocado Retail, which we half own with them, and we work very closely with, especially on the food side of our business. I would offer out another comparison, which is we have a massive relationship with a company called TCS, and especially in the data space, a lot of our colleagues are contracted in terms of like a longer term strategic relationship with this company. And culturally, and to really be effective in our roles, we need to be one team. But at the same time, sometimes it feels like we've got a big enough challenge as it is that sometimes we feel like we need to ruthlessly focus on who are ultimately our accountability, which are our colleagues. And it can be a balancing act in terms of what's our end goal objective. And sometimes it means investing, I suppose, in colleagues or an engagement and bringing teams together that on paper you would say that's not our responsibility, but actually it's the right thing to do to try and move us all forward. So we are definitely very conscious of being really collaborative with our partners. A lot of our suppliers, our partners, whoever they are and however we work with them, they're integral ultimately to how we operate our business, like our colleagues are. So I suppose I would flip it on its head a bit and talk about something a bit broader, which is like simplicity. I think we talk a lot about how do we make things simple for our colleagues to engage with these things, and how do we make life a lot easier through digital and data as well through the solutions we provide. What that often means is it being more complex for us to make it more simple for others. And I think you just got to get over that, and you just got to crack on until you find a way to make it simple for yourself, to make it simple for others. You have to burden yourself, and that's the approach we take.
Thank you. I hope that helps answer the question, Emma, and thanks for posing that. Anyone else, by all means, do put your hand up, or if you've got any other questions for our panel, it'd be great to kind of hear from you on the call. But while we're waiting for that, Connor, I guess one of the things I did want to ask you particularly was, what is the one key piece of advice you'd give to other organisations and individuals that are experiencing similar challenges?
Yeah. I mean, I struggle with one thing on everything. I don't have a favorite color. I don't have a favorite anything. So I'll probably throw out 3, but I'll make them short and sweet. My first is set your default to open, and it can make a lot of people feel uncomfortable. And what I mean by that is the programs you offer out. We always say that we target them for people for a reason, but we never say no. If you're not that person and you're not doing it for that reason, we won't say no. We default to open. We want everything to be available to everyone, store colleague, non-store colleague, etc. And we try and take a similar approach, and kind of slightly off topic, but with our data as well, like access to data, so that they can apply some of these things. Historically, companies go like this, they're like, sorry, you don't have the password. Sorry, you don't have access. You're not in the right job role. And we're really trying to challenge ourselves on all of this to default to open. It can feel uncomfortable, but it's absolutely the right thing to do culturally, and to let people move themselves on when they're ready to. A lot of us have said it already, mindset over technical skill. I think it's massive. Actually, the opportunity with getting value out of digital and data, I think you have to start by not thinking about digital and data. It's about change, it's about mindset, and try and say digital and data as little as possible. It's like when you say something and someone says, what does that mean? And you use the same word to explain what it means. They still don't get it.
Yeah.
Like, stop using that.
Yeah, totally support that, Connor. I think what you've done really well at M&S is started your journey around transformational change and the mindset of how data, supports, everyday business practices. And, as Jack told us in his role, right through to one of your store managers, handheld device, managing stock. I mean, great transition, but like you say, will never end, which is quite interesting from an L&D function point of view, how much we've got to keep up and continue rolling out, inspirational programs to keep the skills where we need them to be in the business. So yeah, great story from M&S. You should be very proud, Connor.
Just try things. Oh, listen, I think that would be my final one, is to speak to people. I think you can get so immersed in what you're trying to do, and you can think, we're so behind people, or are we behind people? And I always get so surprised when we speak to people, and that's why I'm so keen to, like, we're always quite open whenever we talk to other businesses as well, because we want to extract some value of things that maybe we haven't thought of or tried. Hopefully we can offer something of use to other businesses as well, and it just helps you understand, oh, maybe we're a bit ahead of where we thought we were, or actually maybe we haven't even thought about that when we should have been thinking about.
Yeah. And if any of our clients on the call that are interested in, any sort of round tables, or if you want to be included, then again, drop your details in the chat, because, I'm sure we can continue that, because this is like, an ongoing strategy, certainly for Babington, around supporting around upskilling and reskilling in digital. So happy to pull together, groups of like-minded or different industries, people to come together to share, as Connor said, because that's how we all learn, isn't it?
Yeah.
Great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. I know, Mohammed, you've put a question in just to Connor, and we are just at the end of the time, but I just want to is there sort of a couple of words you want to sort of respond to on that, Connor, that question around, would you agree that building a culture of innovation is also about changing the culture of the organisation environment to be more receptive to change?
Yes.
Brilliant. There we go. Absolutely, Mohammed.
Absolutely.
All right,
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, really great question. And look, thank you everybody for joining today, spending your lunchtime with us over this last hour. I hope you've had some really great takeaways from our special session today. Thank you hugely to Paul Fleming, to Connor Rose, to Jack Appleton, to Rachel, and to Joe for joining us today. By all means, there is lots of information we'll be sending out on the back of it, that as you've been registered to today's webinar, we'll send you the recording, we'll send you links to where the FutureDotNow report can be found, and you've got Rachel's contact details here. Anyone that's been on the call today, do speak out to anyone on the Babington team and we'll get you connected. But really appreciate you all joining today, and have a great rest of your day and week. Thanks, everybody.